The ancient Greeks had a problem. No, not the usual ones. Philosophical debates, Spartan gym routines, or the eternal struggle of keeping a toga from slipping. This was far more dire. Their vegetables were disappearing. Take moly, for instance. Homer himself sang of this mystical herb in the Odyssey, claiming it could cure enchantments and ward off sorcery. Some said it had snow-white flowers and roots as black as midnight, while others swore it tasted like honeyed ambrosia with a kick of peppercorn. It was the Bitcoin of vegetables, rare, valuable, and shrouded in enough mystery to make even the most skeptical philosopher raise an eyebrow. Greek farmers allegedly cultivated moly in secret, whispering of its powers like modern-day hype beasts guarding the location of a pop-up sneaker drop. It was the ultimate superfood before superfoods were a thing, rumored to heal wounds, sharpen memory, and maybe even make your toga look more flattering, though that last one might have been marketing. So, what happened to it? Theories abound. Maybe it was over-harvested into oblivion, picked clean by desperate healers and ambitious chefs. Perhaps it was a victim of myth obscuring reality. Was moly ever real, or just a poetic flourish to make Odysseus sound extra resourceful? The ancient equivalent of "my dog ate my homework." Or, here's a spicy take, maybe it's still out there, hiding in some forgotten corner of a Mediterranean hillside, waiting for a hipster farmer with a taste for historical irony to rediscover it. Attention, botanists with too much time on your hands, get on this. One thing's for sure, if moly was real, its disappearance is the ultimate cold case. Was it the kale of 500 BC or just a tall tale? The world may never know, unless you, dear reader, decide to dig up your backyard and find out. Calling all plant detectives, the case of the missing moly is officially open. If moly was the Bitcoin of vegetables, then silphium was the truffle-infused, gold leaf-wrapped, caviar-topped Bitcoin, worth its weight in silver and then some. This legendary plant was the ultimate status symbol of the ancient world, the kind of ingredient that would make a Roman gourmand swoon harder than a gladiator in a toga malfunction. Grown exclusively in the sun-baked fields of Cyrene, modern-day Libya, silphium was the ancient equivalent of a Michelin-starred delicacy, except instead of Yelp reviews, its reputation was cemented by entire economies, collapsing when it vanished. The Greeks and Romans used it for everything. Cooking, its sharp celery meets garlic flavor elevated even the blandest barley porridge. Medicine, a cure-all for everything from indigestion to heartbreak. And, population control. Let's just say it was the original family planning herb and leave it at that. Imagine if avocado toast, penicillin, and a lifetime supply of condoms were all rolled into one plant. That was silphium. No wonder it was stamped on Cyrene's coins like a botanical celebrity. But here's the twist. Despite being the ancient world's most obsessively farmed crop, silphium still went extinct. Theories? Oh, we've got options. Maybe it was climate change. Cyrene's fertile lands dried up faster than a Spartan's patience for small talk. Or perhaps it was over-harvesting, because nothing kills a good thing faster than humans loving it to death. See also, dodo birds, blockbuster, and your ex's goodwill. The juiciest theory? The plant was so stubbornly resistant to cultivation that it basically rage-quit existence. Ancient farmers tried transplanting it, bribing it, even singing to it, because sure, why not? But silphium refused to grow anywhere but its tiny homeland. Talk about a diva. So, could silphium make a comeback? Modern botanists have debated whether its cousin, ferula, is a distant, less glamorous relative. But let's be real, it's like comparing a knockoff handbag to the original Birkin. The real question is, if we did resurrect silphium, what would we even do with it? Slap it on artisanal flatbreads, market it as the keto-friendly herb of the gods? Until then, we're left with a mystery as baffling as why the Greeks thought lying on couches to eat was a good idea. Silphium, the ultimate ghost of dinners past. Attention, hipster farmers, the world needs a silphium revival. Get growing or at least start a Kickstarter. If silphium's disappearance were a true crime podcast, the episode title would be Who Killed the World's First Superfood? Because this plant didn't just fade away, it vanished like a philosopher's patience during a stoic debate. One day it was the Beyoncé of ancient herbs, adorning coins and curing ailments. The next, poof, gone without a trace. The prime suspect? The Romans, naturally. They loved Silphium the way tech bros love blockchain, obsessively, indiscriminately, and with zero regard for sustainability. Historical records suggest they harvested it into oblivion, turning Cyrene's fields into a botanical graveyard. Imagine if someone vacuumed up every last truffle in France and then wondered why they couldn't find more. That's Rome for you. But let's entertain alternative theories, because blaming the Romans is too easy. Maybe Silphium was the victim of bad PR. Pliny the Elder, ancient Rome's answer to a wellness influencer, claimed the last stalk was gifted to Emperor Nero as a curiosity. Nero, being Nero, probably ate it on a whim and then demanded more, like a toddler who's just discovered candy. If that's true, Silphium's extinction wasn't tragedy, it was farce. Or perhaps it was climate change. Cyrene's fertile coast slowly aridified, turning into the Mediterranean's version of a retired rock star's hairline. Silphium, stubborn as a Spartan in a debate, refused to adapt. Some plants hybridize. Silphium, it took its secrets to the grave. Here's the kicker. Modern botanists think they've found Silphium's underwhelming cousin, ferula, lurking in the wild. But let's be honest, it's like finding a dollar store candle and insisting it's the same as Cleopatra's perfume. The flavor's bland, the magic's gone, and the only thing it cures is disappointment. So, why should we care? Because Silphium wasn't just a plant, it was a cultural icon. Its resin-seasoned feasts, its juice-soothed heartburn and heartbreak, and its silhouette on coins was the ancient equivalent of putting a Tesla logo on your merch. Losing it was like losing both pizza and aspirin in one fell swoop, which brings us to the ultimate question: can we bring it back? Geneticists, get your pipettes ready. Hipster farmers, clear your greenhouse schedules. The world deserves a comeback tour for history's most enigmatic herb. Picture it now. Artisanal Silphium-infused olive oil, $50 a bottle because nostalgia tastes expensive. Until then, we're left with a mystery and a challenge. Botanists of the world, unite. Resurrect the Bitcoin of vegetables, or at least try not to overwater it this time. If Silphium was the truffle of antiquity, then the lentil of Lesbos was its hipster cousin, small batch, artisanal, and tragically underrated before vanishing into obscurity. Picture a lentil so flavorful it made ordinary legumes weep with envy, nutty and rich, cultivated in the shade of ancient olive trees like a well-kept secret among Greek farmers. This wasn't just a lentil, it was the microbrew of pulses, the kind of ingredient that would have had Athenian foodies trading amphorae of olive oil for a single sack. Grown on the sun-drenched island of Lesbos, home to Sappho's poetry and apparently really good lentils, this variety was the ultimate farm-to-table staple before farm-to-table was a hashtag. Farmers planted it between olive groves, letting the tree's dappled shade work its magic, a technique so clever it'd make a permaculture enthusiast swoon. The result? A lentil with depth, a legume with panache. So what happened to this culinary marvel? Blame the Romans, again. When their empire's palate shifted toward blander, bulkier staples, think barley porridge so dull it could double as mortar, the delicate lentil of Lesbos fell out of fashion. It was the ancient equivalent of quinoa being replaced by plain white rice because it's easier to chew. Tragic. But here's the twist. Unlike Silphium, this lentil might still be out there. Some botanists swear they've spotted its descendants in remote Greek villages, masquerading as humble brown lentils. Cue dramatic gasp. Could it be, or is this just wishful thinking, like hoping your sourdough starter will suddenly develop a personality? The real mystery isn't just why it disappeared, it's how we forgot something so delicious. Imagine a world where this lentil survived, starring in trendy salads and slow-cooked stews, its nuttiness praised by chefs and food bloggers alike. Instead, we're left with a culinary ghost, a what if as haunting as an unfinished Sappho poem. So, here's the challenge. Next time you're in Greece, skip the souvenir shops and hunt down a dusty bag of local lentils. Taste them. Really taste them. If you detect a whisper of ancient Lesbos in every bite, congratulations. You might have just stumbled upon the hipster lentil of antiquity. Attention, legume lovers. The search for the lost lentil begins now. Who's ready to, eat like an ancient Greek? If Pythagoras had a favorite vegetable, and let's be honest, a man who banned beans for philosophical reasons definitely had opinions, it was the philosopher's cabbage. This leafy enigma wasn't your average garden variety green, it was the kale of 500 BC1, a cruciferous celebrity whispered about in the same breath as geometry and harmonic ratios. Ancient texts describe it as robust yet delicate, with a flavor that danced between peppery and sweet, like arugula's sophisticated cousin who studied abroad in Athens. Pythagoras allegedly praised its mathematical perfection, possibly because its tightly wound leaves resembled his beloved geometric spirals, or maybe he just really hated beans and needed a backup veggie. Either way, it was the must-have side dish for intellectual dinner parties, served alongside debates about the meaning of life and whether triangles were truly divine. But here's the twist: the philosopher's cabbage vanished. Not in a dramatic, Silphium-style extinction, but quietly, like a student slipping out of a boring lecture. The culprit? Hybridization. As farmers tinkered with crops, crossbreeding for hardiness or yield, the original strain got lost in the genetic shuffle. Imagine if someone took a vintage Bordeaux and diluted it with grape juice until it tasted like boxed wine. That's what happened to Pythagoras' prized green. The real tragedy? Modern cabbages are fine, but they lack the mystique. No one looks at a bowl of coleslaw and thinks, ah yes, the sacred vegetable of the ancients. The philosopher's cabbage was more than food, it was a statement. Eating it probably made you feel smarter, or at least smugger, which is basically the same thing in academic circles. Could it be resurrected? Botanists insist that somewhere in the tangled family tree of Brassica oleracea, its DNA lingers like an obscure footnote in a philosophy textbook. The challenge? Convincing today's farmers to grow a finicky, low-yield cabbage just because some dead mathematician liked it. Then again, people pay $10 for artisanal toast, so never say never. Until then, we're left with a delicious mystery. Was it the perfect vegetable or just the perfect story? Either way, Pythagoras would be thrilled to know we're still puzzling over his leafy legacy. Attention, farm-to-table nerds. The philosopher's cabbage awaits its revival. Who's ready to eat their way to enlightenment? If the philosopher's cabbage was the intellectual's vegetable, then the divine radish of Delphi was the mystic's snack. A root so steeped in prophecy, it made the oracle's riddles look straightforward. Grown in the shadow of Apollo's temple, this wasn't just a radish, it was the cryptocurrency of clairvoyance, a veggie that promised divine insight with every crunchy bite. Ancient farmers tended these radishes like sacred relics, whispering prayers as they planted. The soil near Delphi was said to be infused with pneuma, the same divine breath that fueled the oracle's visions, and the radishes absorbed it like sponges. When harvested, they glowed faintly under moonlight, or so the legends claimed, their skins streaked with violet and gold like a sunset captured underground. But the real magic? Their flavor. Descriptions range from fiery as a god's wrath to sweet as ambrosia, with a lingering aftertaste that supposedly unlocked flashes of foresight. Priests served them sliced thin at rituals, claiming a single bite could reveal everything from the next harvest yield to whether your spouse was sneaking extra olives from the pantry, the ancient world's version of a lie detector test. So why did they vanish? Blame the rise of Christianity, which frowned upon pagan veggies with delusions of grandeur. As Delphi's influence waned, so did its radishes, plowed under by farmers who feared their heathen reputation. Some say the last batch was tossed into a bonfire during a particularly zealous sermon, which feels like overkill for a root vegetable. But here's the kicker. Modern radish enthusiasts swear they've found distant cousins in wild patches near Delphi, their roots faintly iridescent under certain light. Are they the real deal, or just wishful thinking, like mistaking a street magician for Merlin? The divine radish wasn't just food, it was experienced dining millennia before the term existed. Imagine a trendy restaurant today serving oracle's tapas with radish carpaccio and a side of fortune-telling. Reservations would book out faster than a flight to Atlantis. So, dear reader, the challenge is clear. Next time you're in Greece, skip the souvenir shops and dig around Delphi's outskirts. If you unearth a radish that tastes like destiny, congratulations. You've just found history's ultimate party vegetable. Attention, food witches and botanists. The divine radish awaits its comeback. Who's ready to eat their future? If the Spartans had a secret weapon, it wasn't just their abs of steel or their unnerving tolerance for cold showers, it was their garlic. Not just any garlic, mind you, but the warrior's garlic, a strain so potent it could make a grown hoplite weep, and not just from the smell. This was the ancient world's answer to performance-enhancing drugs, except instead of shady backroom deals, it came with a side of roasted lamb and bragging rights. Cultivated in the rocky soils of Laconia, this garlic was the kale of 500 BC. If kale could also double as a chemical weapon, Spartan soldiers reportedly ate it before battle, believing it granted strength, stamina, and possibly the ability to glare enemies into submission. Modern science might call this placebo effect, but try telling that to a man who just bench pressed a shield wall. Farmers grew it in terraced plots, using techniques so precise they'd make a Swiss watchmaker nod in approval. The bulbs were massive, the cloves oily with volatile compounds, and the stench legendary. Even the Persians allegedly retreated faster from a Spartan's breath than from their spears. So why did it disappear? Simple, no one else could handle it. The Athenians, with their delicate sensibilities and love of perfume symposia, deemed it unfit for civilized company. Roman gourmands who'd happily eat stuffed dormice drew the line at garlic that could strip paint. By the time Sparta's star faded, so did its garlic, replaced by milder strains that wouldn't clear a room. But here's the twist. Modern geneticists suspect the warrior's garlic might still exist, hiding in remote Greek villages under less glamorous names like Grandma's firebulbs. Cue dramatic, chopped, reveal music. Could today's athletes harness its power? Picture Olympians chomping cloves like energy gels, or CrossFit bros marketing Spartan breath protein shakes. The PR alone would be gold. Until then, we're left with a mystery and a challenge. Attention, gardeners with no sense of smell. The warrior's garlic demands a comeback. Who's brave enough to plant history's most aggressive condiment? If the gods had a favorite dessert, it wasn't ambrosia, it was the honey melon of Olympus, a fruit so succulent it made nectar taste like tap water. Grown on the sun-kissed slopes of Mount Olympus, this melon was the candy of the gods, a golden orb of sweetness that dripped with juice like liquid sunshine. Forget modern honeydews, this was their ancestor on steroids, with a fragrance so intoxicating it could lure bees from 3 valleys away. Ancient farmers treated these melons like VIPs, pampering them with mineral-rich soil and just the right amount of mountain breeze. The result? A flesh so tender it practically dissolved on the tongue, with a flavor that danced between floral honey and ripe apricot. It was the truffle of fruits. Rare, luxurious, and reserved for feasts where mortals hoped to impress deities, or at least their in-laws. Even the Spartans, who considered gourmet food a sign of weakness, allegedly made exceptions for Olympus melons, though they probably ate them while doing push-ups to maintain their reputation. So, what happened to this divine snack? Trade routes. When Rome's empire expanded, bringing cheaper, hardier melons from the east, the delicate Olympus variety fell out of favor. It was the ancient equivalent of swapping handcrafted gelato for gas stations' soft serve, tragic but economically inevitable. Farmers abandoned their terraces, and the melons vanished like a demigod at a family reunion. But here's the juicy twist. Some botanists claim the honey melon's genetic cousins still cling to life in remote Greek orchards. A few stubborn growers, perhaps descendants of those ancient farmers, swear their melons carry whispers of Olympus's glory. Though good luck getting them to share cuttings, these guys guard their fruit like dragons hoarding gold. Could this melon stage a comeback? Picture it now. Limited edition Olympus honey melon sorbet, $20 a scoop because immortality tastes expensive. Farmers' markets would riot, food influencers would weep, and Pythagoras, wherever he is, would finally have a worthy post-cabbage snack. Until then, we're left with a sticky-fingered mystery. Was it the sweetest fruit in history, or just the sweetest story? Attention! Fruit detectives, the honey melon of Olympus is ripe for revival. Who's ready to taste the heavens? If wine snobs today obsess over rare vintages, ancient sommeliers would have sold their sandals for a sip of the ghost grape of Crete. This elusive vine produced wines so extraordinary, they were said to shimmer like liquid amethyst in the cup, with a flavor that danced between wild berries and sea salt. Like Dionysus himself had bottled a Mediterranean sunset. It was the truffle of ancient viticulture, the kind of grape that made kings hoard amphorae like Wall Street bros hoarding Bitcoin. Grown in the volcanic soils of Crete's sun-scorched hills, this grape was a diva from day one. It refused to thrive anywhere else, as if it knew its terroir was its brand. Farmers whispered that the vines grew best when serenaded by lyre music, because of course even plants had standards in antiquity. The resulting wine was so prized, Minoan nobles allegedly traded entire ships of olive oil for a single crate. Forget age to perfection. This stuff was legendary at birth. So why is it extinct? Blame vine disease, the ancient world's equivalent of a bad Yelp review. A blight swept through Crete in the 2nd century BCE, turning lush vineyards into kindling. The ghost grape, stubborn to the end, refused to hybridize or adapt. It was the sommelier's white whale, glorious, untamable, and ultimately gone. But here's the twist. Modern geneticists are this close to losing sleep over it. A few years ago, a team found grape seeds in a Minoan shipwreck, and the internet collectively lost its mind. Could these be the ghost grape's long-lost offspring? Or just another dead end, like trying to recreate your grandma's pie recipe from a 200-year-old cookbook? The real tragedy? Imagine this grape resurrected today. Wine lists would feature limited edition Minoan Mourvèdre, $500 a glass, comes with a lecture on Linear B. Hipster winemakers would tattoo vine diagrams on their biceps. The ghost grape wouldn't just be back, it'd be a movement. Until then, we're left with a mystery as hazy as a hangover after a symposium. Was it the greatest grape ever grown, or just history's most persuasive placebo? Attention, anophils with too much disposable income. The ghost grape awaits its encore. Who's ready to ferment a legend? If the ancient Greeks had a culinary mascot, it wasn't the olive. It was the forgotten fig of Athens, a variety so integral to daily life that it was basically the avocado toast of 400 BCE. This wasn't just a fruit, it was a cultural icon, a lunchbox staple, and possibly the reason Athenian philosophers had the energy to argue about anything for hours. Sweet but not cloying, with a honeyed richness that made fresh cheese taste like a revelation, it was the OG fig, the one that started it all. Farmers grew these figs in the rocky soils around Athens, using techniques so refined they'd make a modern permaculturist weep with envy. The trees thrived in the Mediterranean sun, their roots digging deep into the earth like philosophers probing the meaning of life. Harvest time was a civic event, with baskets of plump purple-green figs hauled to the agora like treasure. Soldiers packed them for campaigns, poets nibbled them for inspiration, and lazy students smuggled them into lectures as contraband snacks. Some things never change. So why did this fig disappear? Globalization, baby. As trade routes expanded, sweeter, flashier figs from Persia and Egypt waltzed into Greece like exotic dancers at a symposium. The Athenian fig, humble and unfussy, couldn't compete. It was the ancient equivalent of your favorite indie band selling out to corporate gigs, except in this case, the band literally faded into obscurity. By the Roman era, it was a footnote, remembered only by nostalgic grandparents muttering, "They don't make figs like they used to." But here's the twist. Some botanists swear the forgotten fig still lingers in forgotten orchards outside Athens, its trees gnarled but stubbornly alive. A few heirloom growers, descendants of those ancient farmers, might even have a sapling or two tucked away like a family secret. Try asking for cuttings though, and they'll suddenly develop very poor memory. Could this fig stage a comeback? Picture it now. Athenian fig and feta toast, $14 because history tastes better on sourdough. Farmers' markets would clamor for it. Food bloggers would wax poetic about its authentic terroir. And Pythagoras, if he weren't busy boycotting beans, might finally approve of a snack. Until then, we're left with a sticky, sweet mystery. Was it the perfect fruit or just the perfect memory? Attention, urban foragers and fig fanatics. The forgotten fig of Athens is ripe for rediscovery. Who's ready to take a bite of antiquity?